Yeah, just obviously really excited to play a really good BYU team. They're really talented. About as excited to go play them as I am to see our fans, in the seats. This is going to be a big game where they can make an impact. Was really pleased with the crowd this past Saturday, and I know that they're even going to be cranked up louder, more intense this next week. I think this is the kind of game that, the Autzen crowd can make a big, big impact in the game. But this team's a really talented team that we're about to go play. The more I watch their film, the more respect I have for them and the job they do. They play the game with a certain level of physicality and violence. That's fun to see on film, and I know it's going to be a fun game for our players.
Home field advantage, starting with Ralph.
Obviously, last week, the challenge was kind of flushing a result and moving on to the next week. Is it obviously a different kind of challenge, but similar in a sense, kind of flushing a result, not being too low last week, not being too high this week, and regrouping and getting ready for another opponent?
Yeah, for us, it's improvement. It's a plan for improvement. We had things that we had to get better after week one, and regardless of the result, we're really process oriented. And there's a lot of things that we still want to get better at from week two. We want to play for 60 minutes or as long as it takes in this game. And we want to be able to use as many bodies as possible to be able to contribute and help us.
Right in front of him, Eric.
Coach, last week I think you talked about when to see an offensive and defensive identity take place. Did you see that, and kind of what are your impressions of both units?
Yeah, I think we're closer today than we were last week, but still not completely where we want to be. There's certainly a lot of positives to come out of the last game. We had a ton of first downs and we're able to move the ball really well on offense. I'd love to see some more of those, plays that were 15 yards turn into 30-yard plays, create some more explosives. I think a lot of that has to do with how we play without the ball, down the field with our finishing blocks and being able to, instead of, buying a ticket and being a spectator on a play, going and finishing blocks and plays. That's something we're looking for certain on offense. Defensively, have to continue to play within the framework of the defense and play with relentless effort. But you want to have an opportunity to create some more negatives, be able to finish on some one-on-ones. We certainly were able to get some takeaways this last game. That's got to be something we continue to do moving forward.
Third row middle, Chris.
Yeah, Franklin and Thornton had a real nice game on Saturday. What are your thoughts on their improvement and just going into week 3?
Yeah, I think it's a great example of when you work really hard and the opportunity comes your way and it presents itself, things go well. And both those guys, we were able to show a play today to our players that happened in practice, and then the exact same play happened in the game on Saturday. And I think that's really the big emphasis. Troy ran a curl route on a third down, was able to convert it. We were able to go back to practice, show the exact same coverage versus that route in practice, and then it carried over there to the game. So when you're able to replicate and play the game really before you play the game in practice, I think things like that will happen out there on the field. And, this past Saturday it was Troy. He was able to get a lot of touches based on the looks that we were getting. Next Saturday it might be somebody else. But, both those guys did a good job in the game.
Second row left, Jerry.
Yeah, Coach, you played a lot of players. It was nice to see. Could you name maybe a few what you call second level, maybe weren't starters, that you impressed you a little bit after watching the video?
Off the top of my head, there isn't one guy necessarily would stick out. We actually, rather than doing what a lot of teams do, going back and naming, the players of the week, we looked at really our look teams, because those are the guys that really helped us win the game. Who was the best look of the week? Some of those guys. And there's certainly a lot of guys that we talked about during the week that did a good job for us, whether it was Van Dyne or Brevard that did a really good job. Even, Byron came over there and gave us some phenomenal runs at times. That's the thing I'll keep leaning on, is some of our best players going over to the other side to give great looks has been really beneficial for us. The same thing can be said for guys defensively.
James, front row.
You said Saturday you wanted to get the 14 points back in, other than the uncalled OPI that I'm sure you were thrilled about on the first touchdown. What stood out to you? And it looked like on that short possession that they hit you a little bit with 20 and 21 and 22 at times. And looking at BYU, they use a little bit of 20 and 21. Is there any carryover and applicability to that?
Yeah, there's certainly some stuff that we can coach off of. I think they did a good job in the game of, this past week. They ran the ball when we were in, our best run situation defense on a third down. They did a good job there, and we want to do a better job of recognizing that as players and coaches in that situation. But certainly there's some carryover, some of the 12 personnel sets that we'll get this week from BYU.
In the back, Dirk.
Dan, I believe that after your post-game press conference wrapped up on Saturday, BYU and Baylor were still playing. Did you go immediately find somewhere to go watch the end of that game live? And if so, what were your impressions? Kind of a wild finish in that one.
Yeah, crazy game. I was hoping they'd play 8 or 9 overtimes, wear them out. But obviously that, it's two really good football teams battling out, and it could have gone either way down the stretch. I think good teams find a way to win, and obviously they were able to pull it out. So congrats to them. But yeah, I was able to catch the end of that one.
Front left, Matt.
You brought up BYU's physicality. Looking across the board, they look pretty big, pretty heavy, multiple positions. Just your thoughts on their personnel, and just they don't maybe typically look like a independent or maybe a group of 5 team you would associate that with.
No, they're a good team. They've got great players across the board. We highlighted a couple of those guys today in our scouting report, and pointed out they have NFL talent on their roster, so they have a good team that play really well. A lot of returning starters, a lot of continuity there as well.
We're going to go second row, and then here, just hand it over when you're done.
Can you talk about quarterback Jaron Hall and just the challenge he presents to your defense?
Yeah, one of the things about BYU's offense is over time they've been one of the most explosive offenses as far as getting the ball down the field and distributing the ball down the field. They really stretch the field, right? And Hall does a great job of distributing the ball. He throws a good ball. Understands their offense, but also has the ability to run, so he presents some good challenges with his ability to scramble. But I'd say he's a quarterback that looks to throw it, right, and keeps his eyes downfield.
It's been running back by committee early. 5 running backs touched the ball against Georgia, even more so against Eastern Washington. What have you seen from that grouping?
Yeah, running hard and continued improvement. I think last game we were able to establish the run game, and it really helped us out. It sets everything else up. But one thing that I've been impressed about with our backs is their ability to get the ball, not just running it, but also catching it out of the backfield. I think our longest pass play was to Sean out of the backfield on the 3rd down. So those guys having success is really good for our team in that group.
We're going to go back to Chris in the middle.
In the annals of Oregon football, a win that has kind of stood the test of time is Oregon beating BYU in 1990. It's just kind of a big classic game, and I know it's a long shot, but has anybody ever brought that game up to you heading into this week, or just talked to you at all about any of the old timers in the Cass Center? I'm not sure if there's anybody still around.
I'm going to look it up now. Yeah, I haven't heard a lot about that game, but looking forward to going back and finding maybe some old film.
Eric on the left.
You mentioned them. A lot of experience on BYU's team. A lot of guys, I think 15 of 16 leading tacklers, but more than that, a lot of guys go on missions and they're 24, 25 years old. They've started their lives almost like more than the average college kid. Kind of what advantages does that have? And do you kind of foresee, especially in a tight game, that maybe that could come into play at all?
I've never really thought about it from that angle. They certainly have some older guys on their team because of that. I don't think it'll necessarily present an advantage to them outside of, I guess we could all say they might have, some maturity because of that. But we'll see.
Right in front, James.
Wanted your assessment from both defensive perspectives of the Baylor BYU game, Dan, since you know what Dave runs, how much of what he did can, particularly against the run, carries over to what you guys will look to do, and you get to see what they're doing offensively against it, vice versa. And conversely, because Jeff Grimes quite well from the Broyles and what he's done, for Kalani to out-scheme him, what did BYU do to stifle one of the more explosive and better offensive minds in the game this past weekend?
Yeah, BYU, is a really good defense. They do a really good job, and I think they present some really unique looks. They're not a cookie cutter defense. They do a lot of different stuff, and I think that showed up. Obviously, I think Coach Grimes had some really good plays in that game as well. But obviously, BYU did a good job. It was kind of a defensive battle in a lot of ways until it got to the end of the game there. And even then, it was still, coming down to field goal, tit for tat. So, they do a really good job. There's certainly some similarities in some of the stuff that, Baylor and us, what they do on defense, but it won't be the exact same by any means. They did a good job, though, of controlling, some of the passing game and stopping the run.
The back, Trevor.
Yeah, kind of along those lines, BYU's given up a total of 300 pass yards through 2 games. That's pretty difficult to do. As a defensive guy yourself, what stands out to you about the way that they've been able to defend through the air so far this season?
They just do a good job of mixing it up. And then, when it is pass, they do a great job of recognizing it and getting out. They key run pass really well. They, again, present different looks. They kind of let their core play the front, right? And they kind of handle the run, and they play really well on the perimeter, a lot of overlap, up front. But and then their back end, their secondary does a good job. They have really talented corners and a good secondary. Those guys kind of handle the wideouts, and they play off of each other well.
Back to Rob.
Another position where you got a lot of depth, and it seems like you're finding ways to use it as inside linebacker. What's been the process of kind of identifying strengths and then deploying those guys in different effective ways?
Yeah, ultimately, games can be long, and you want guys to be fresh and be able to go out there and execute. And if we have guys that can execute at a high level, we want to be able to utilize them.
Ready, Matt in the front.
You talked about last week practice needing to be harder than games. Has that carried over today? Has the players shown that importance of urgency of playing harder in practice?
Yeah, our guys have did a really good job today. Again, BYU does some stuff that's different, so we had to get some early looks at that, and I think they embraced that. But we went out there and worked today, similar to what we did last week.
Back to James.
You mentioned kickoffs for the past couple of weeks. Wanted your thoughts on kind of multi phases of it. One of Camden taking over, having 6 of 10 on touchbacks, and you mentioned the long returns. You've had 2 long returns allowed, but also 3 that were closer to average. And I think you used at least 3 different kickoff plays or formations on Saturday. So your thoughts on all of it, on Camden versus Boyle at this point, and who's kind of got that job, and your coverage in particular.
Yeah, Boyle was actually a little bit dinged up going in to the game, and Camden did a good job filling in. That being said, I know Camden would like to have a couple of those back. We need cleaner kick locations. Obviously a touchback's always great, but when you don't put the ball where you plan on it going, right, and then you have a coverage unit kind of set to go a certain direction, and that ball doesn't end up there, and then you don't cover and keep your lanes the way you're supposed to, then big returns can happen. And we have to be consistent, more consistent as a whole. The one thing about special teams is it's about one play focus. You don't get a second down to fix what just happened on first down. You go back and look at the score that we gave up early there. That was a really long return with a penalty tagged on top of it. Now you end up in plus territory, and that can't happen. So we have to get better there. We have to do a better job. It's good to have multiple guys that can go out there and kick for us. But as a unit, I know we want to be better there than we've been.
Middle left, Eric.
Ryan didn't play last Saturday. Wonder if there's an update. And then Seven was in quite a bit of pain, but looked like he was in decent spirits on the sideline. Just wonder if there was an update there.
Yeah, I think both. Ryan's one that we probably could have pushed to get out there, but I think it was a good opportunity for us to give some experience to some other guys that we wanted to be able to see. Very hopeful that he'll be back and able to help us this week. And then Seven, I think same thing, knowing we have some other guys that can help us there, but Seven will be ready to go.
Middle right, Jared.
With Ryan being out, obviously Jackson and Marcus got a lot of snaps. What did you kind of see from them taking advantage of that chance?
Yeah, they both, they're both smart players, and they play with a level of aggression. Jackson at times, he's a bull in a china shop. I think he would tell you the same thing. I love his passion and his energy for football. He loves the game. He loves playing ball. And you see that show up on film. I think there's a couple plays that both those guys would like to have back, whether it be, our counter plays and opportunities to kick the defensive ends properly. Those guys did a good job playing against us on some of those counter looks. We had an illegal man downfield, a couple times on looks. We got to be aware of the call so we don't do that. But overall, impressed with their effort. Want to see them both, continue to clean up the technical piece of the game.
James.
You're obviously quite familiar with Kenny's offense, both from what you guys were running at Memphis while you were there. You defended Gus's version. One of the critiques of Gus's was that he never fully utilized tight ends. And Mike obviously has done it more. Chad Morris has done it more. Hughes done it more. Kenny might be at a pace right now to do it even more than any of them. How much of this is by design, by what he wants to do, and by the fact that you've got a tight end room with 4 guys who you feel like you can trot out there and play at any given play?
Yeah, I think an offense is a lot harder to defend whenever they're able to lean on every piece of their, of their system and every one of their players' strengths. And the fact that we have tight ends that can play at a high level, we want to make sure we're able to utilize them. We want to do the same thing with our wideouts, with our running backs, with everybody, because if you become, a team that's good at one thing, then that's one thing that you can take away. And the fact that we have a good tight end room, hopefully that creates more opportunities for our wideouts, creates some more opportunities for our backs and everyone else.
On the left, Matt.
What's your philosophy with red shirts? Like Jordan James played against Georgia, didn't play last week. Is it strategic when you play guys that you plan on redshirting, or is it just 4 games when you can get them?
Yeah, Jordan had an ankle that was bothering him, and we probably could have pushed to use him, but he didn't practice a lot during the week, so it wasn't going to be something that we were going to push in the last game. again, if you're good enough, you're old enough, right? So if you can help our team win games, we're going to lean on you and use you.
James.
You've gotten to play the dime a couple of times. I think one against Georgia and a couple of times this past week. It looks like, well, no, 3-play sample, that Jeff plays a particularly big role in that. And this past weekend, I think he played both linebacker and that kind of center field spot. What makes him so useful? Because that was not a package, albeit different, that he played in the last defense. Why is it that he is able to offer such a multiplicity for you guys?
Yeah, Jeff's a versatile player. Obviously coming here as a safety and then growing kind of and moving into the linebacker position, I think he provides the ability to cover. And he has some, obviously some speed that translates to the game and allows us to use him in a couple different ways on third down.
To the left, Eric.
I don't think we've asked you about Kilo Hana basically since he arrived. Can you maybe give us a little background on how he came here and that decision, and then his performance on Saturday, that touchdown in particular? I think people
That
were
was a
pretty
great
impressed.
run, wasn't it? We have a couple of our coaches that have come from the Hawaii staff, so they were familiar with Kilo, and he just comes out there and works every single day. And to see him have a couple of those runs that he had in the game the other day, I don't think was a surprise to any of us coaches or any of the players on the team, because he works like that every day in practice. And also had a big play on kickoff. Continue to look for him to be a guy that can help us and push us over the edge to be successful.
Rob.
Started off talking about the crowd. I just wonder, because you talked last week, you were looking forward to it. When you're on the sideline, when you're coaching the game, and you have so much going on in that regard, like, were you able to get a sense for the atmosphere? You were excited to experience it. So what was it like to experience it? And did kind of everything it was cracked up to be in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think this place is really special, and we have really passionate fans, and the fans are what make that thing tick. It's never been a distraction for me, but I think everyone enjoys being in an environment like that, and I think I'm hoping to see it even tenfold this weekend. With the game that we have coming in and the atmosphere that we can create, that can be it's a big piece of our success when we can put some fans in the seats and go create an environment like that. I think it makes it really tough for an opponent.
Back to James.
And looking back at the film, what your thoughts were on Bell? You said you wanted to see on a couple of throws. It looked like, at least from my amateur observation, that there were a couple where it wasn't necessarily wrong decisions in completions, but maybe some missed opportunities on some of those more explosive plays you were alluding to before.
Yeah, I thought Bo played well. He went where he was supposed to go with the ball. Majority of the time, there's a couple things that we cleaned up as a staff coming in, saying, "Hey, where was this guy supposed to break, and then where's the ball supposed to be," and making sure we were in sync on that. Overall, I didn't think he put the ball in jeopardy. There's a couple throws that he probably needed to have back that didn't turn into negatives or turnovers, but I think that's what we have to continue to push. Bo understands exactly what we're looking for, and so does Ty and Jay. Those guys know exactly where to go with the ball. They made some good checks within the game, so that was comforting to see.
Back to Eric, left middle.
Operationally, I know you said you wanted to go back after the Georgia game and make some assessments on how you use your own time during the game. Did you make any big changes, small changes in terms of how you were involved, maybe specifically with coaching defense?
Nothing huge. Just I think it's for me being this being the beginning for me in this process. Just able to evaluate my time and how I use it in between series before we go out to the next special teams play. Make sure that I get anything communicated to either side of the ball in between. But I want to be involved on both sides and really in special teams as well. And to do that, you have to be engaged really in the moment.
Front left, Matt.
Said it after the game that you wanted to go back and watch the film of get a better feel of things maybe you missed from the sideline. Anything stand out watching film of game 2?
Not a lot. I think one of the biggest things you can do as a coach is you go back and you look for the stuff that, hey, this could have been a big play for us offensively or defensively if it didn't go right here. If this guy didn't make a great, an outstanding play, if we didn't win this one-on-one. And I don't normally want to share those because that might be something for the opponent, right? But there's certainly some things going back. You say, okay, that this can be an issue moving forward if we don't get it fixed. And that's what we always talk about, going to the doctor on Monday to fix those things.
James.
Wanted to confirm that I'm not crazy. On your delay, was there a play clock malfunction that it should have been 40, not 25?
We think there was a mistake there.
Okay. And secondly, in the moment, more process, how does that not get caught by you folks? I mean, in terms of...
we called it out. That being said, we were told it wasn't wrong, at the time. But we also have an assessment for us as a coaching staff now to prevent that from happening in the future. So that's at the end of the day, that's on us as coaches. We got to get it right. There might be a mistake in a game. Obviously, officials can make mistakes just like coaches can make mistakes, and we have to do a good job of IDing that and making sure we're ahead of it.
Second row left, Jerry.
Yeah, Coach, watching the telecast, it was pretty fun watching you being mic'd up. How was that experience? Did you get to review what you actually said and what they used of what you did? Or
I wasn't in charge of that. I'm glad. Hopefully, somebody did a good job of assessing that because I'm not sure if it's all good for TV or not. But yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it during the game.
Rob, back in the back.
Obviously, you don't want him picking up penalties, but Bryce Betcher being a guy, two-sport kid from Eugene, just impressions on what you've seen from him so far and what his future might be on the gridiron?
I think Bryce is. I just got done meeting with special teams, and I think Bryce is a great example of a guy that he's embracing his role and his way to be able to help our team, and he plays with tremendous effort, and that shows up. You said it. You don't want to have penalties, right? And something we try to pride ourselves in, and we can certainly get better at. That being said, Bryce, when you play with tremendous effort, you're going to get a great result, and he does that consistently, not just on game day, but in practice.
Time for a couple more. James here in the front.
Looked like Matt was back on the sideline with you guys. Who was up in the box then for the defensive side, and is that going to be a move you stick with?
Yeah, I think it went really smooth for us on the sideline. Coach Martin actually got ran into in our last game in the Georgia game. So it's twofold. It's for an opportunity for him to be up. You move a guy up in the secondary. You want to be able to bring somebody down in the secondary to be on the sideline. But he just banged up his knee. We felt like, hey, it kind of fit for him to be up there, but the communication was good.
Last question on the left, Julian in the back.
When you get a bunch of guys, different guys in the end zone like you did on Saturday, what does it just do for a team's confidence heading into a tough opponent like you guys are going to be on Saturday with BYU?
I think every one of our players realize, hey, this is how it works and we can do it, right? But we have to do it on a consistent basis, and we have to do it against, good opponents. So, everything works on paper when you draw it up, right? It's about going out there and executing it. Our guys executed at a high level on Saturday. We need that to carry over for the next game.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate you.